All right, and welcome back to the Busy Executives podcast. As a reminder, what we get to do is help leaders grow in really bite-sized, specific information that really helps leaders and teams optimize and just be their best. And today I have the privilege of getting to talk to Skip Meyer, who is the president of HighPoint IT. And Skip, we've gotten to meet and connect over the past few months. And so I'm really excited for our listeners to hear a little bit more about your story, how you lead, but just some really practical advice for leaders in the field. And so welcome. We're excited to have you today.
Michael, it's great to be here. I sure appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, Skip, for the audience, I have the privilege of knowing you a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your story, how you really got into, number one, being the president of HighPoint, but just a little bit of your background and what really drives you today.
Well, Michael, I think that's kind of a loaded question a little bit for us. You and I have talked at length about entrepreneurship and how some of us just have the bug for some reason. Mm-hmm. I got my start in life being raised on a busy family cattle ranch in central Idaho. And so I suppose I picked up a work ethic there. We didn't have TV. We didn't have hardly even radios. Of course, there was no phones or anything. It seems like the Stone Age ago. But being raised on a ranch, we got up early in the morning and started working, and we worked pretty much all day long. And it was that work ethic that kind of stuck with me and has stuck with me throughout my whole life. In fact, I've been accused of not taking vacations very well. It's hard to take 5-6 days off at a time when I'd like to be productive. And so I got my entrepreneurial bug probably early on in life. Graduated Central Washington University with a degree in accounting and finance, and pursued that. And I started businesses when I was 20 years old. And I kind of laugh. I've been in business for myself since then, and it's been a fun road. Met a lot of quality people. I think the thing that drives me the biggest in business is relationships. I absolutely love people. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I love to meet people. I love to network, build those relationships. I like to see what I can do to help other people on their road to success or on their path to where they're going. If there's things I can do to help people do that, that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that firsthand and benefited from that as well, Skip. So it's awesome to see that heart. I want to jump back for a second though. Do I feel like that family portion for you and growing up on the farm, would you say that really helped instill not only the work ethic, but sort of that drive and belief that you could start companies or start being kind of on your own in your early 20s? I mean, that's not always as common. Do you feel like that family piece was really big for you?
It's funny you should ask that, because I had a grandfather that was always very big on business. I consider myself blessed to have the family that I've had, because my family was always wind in my sails. They pushed me. They encouraged me. My grandfather owned large ranches in his tenure, and I remember many conversations with my grandfather telling me that I can do this. You can do whatever you set your mind to. My father, the same. My mother, the same. It was always encouraging. I feel bad sometimes I meet people that didn't have that good upbringing, or they didn't have a chance to have maybe quality parents. I still have my parents to this day, and they're still encouraging me. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it was a part of my upbringing that made me see where they were going. And maybe I'm guilty because of entrepreneurship, because my parents and my grandparents were that way. Mm-hmm. They had ranches, they had businesses, and I just thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how great is that to have the family, relationship piece be so strong? That's what I'm hearing. Obviously have the work ethic piece in place, but then really the encouragement and belief that you can step out on your own, that you can start your own business, that you can be entrepreneurial, which, again, is not always as common. Maybe common to have one or two of those things, but to have all three, it sounds like really helps set you up for success.
Yeah, I think the mentorship, And if we're talking to people out there that are parents or maybe family members of somebody who does want to taste entrepreneurship or business, encourage them. Don't slow them down. Don't get in their road. It's like, are they going to fail? I have failed more than I've been successful. Mm-hmm. I can honestly say that. There's been a lot of times where I try something and it's like, well, that didn't work out very well. And one of the things that we'll talk about later a little bit in some of the comments that you've made is I think mentorship is so important.
Mm.
And I was blessed to have mentorship as a little boy growing up in my family, but even mentorship later on. Michael, you've been a mentor to me. I watch some of your posts. I watched your podcast. I watch things that you do, and some of the things that you say I take to heart and implement in my business because some of those comments are gold. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs or business types go, well, I've got this and I'm going to be successful. And they dig in and you don't know what you don't know. So if
Mm.
you're going to start a business and if you've never done it before, how do you know that that's going to work? Well, if you listen to people who've been there and done that, many times it can shave off a lot of years of bad habits or a lot of years of struggle
Mm.
if you can adopt those good principles right off the get-go.
Yeah, gosh, it's so true. And, I always say no one ever trust a leader or a coach or a mentor, or somebody who isn't also receiving that, right, in some way.
Right,
There's no
right.
arrival point that we have. And so, just being able to continue to grow in those ways, I think is so important. And you touched on something important here. And I maybe just want to, dive in. Can you think of a specific time you've mentioned, hey, there's been obviously all the success. You have an amazing company right now with an amazing team, and we'll get to that.
Mhm.
But maybe is there one, what you saw as a failure at the time, or one setback, or one thing that you go, gosh, that taught me so much that really helped
Mhm.
catapult me, into the next phase, or helped me be successful maybe a little bit down the road.
Do you know right off the bat what came to my mind? I when we launched HighPoint roughly 14 years ago, we were able to link up with North Idaho College. It's a community college here in the Coeur d'Alene area, and North Idaho College has a program that's run by a gentleman named Bill Jung. And Bill has become a mentor of mine when we first launched HighPoint. And Bill did something early on. He said, Skip, he said, leadership is clarity.
Mm.
Short, concise. Leadership is clarity. I think what he means by that is leadership is clarity for me. Leadership is clarity for what I give off to my staff. But he said something to me, Michael, and it's just classic. I, I, I mean, I suppose we know it down deep inside. But he said to me, he said, Skip, he says, there's two ways to make your business balance. He says there's two ways to get your business to where you're making your payroll, you're paying your rent, whatever costs and expenses you have. He said you either lower your expenses to equal your income, or you raise your income to meet your expenses.
Hmm.
And I know when I say that, people's first reaction is, well, hello. But as
Yeah.
a business person, when we're in the trenches, it's like, oh man, that's an aha moment for me. What I
Mm.
was doing wrong is I was trying to raise my income to cover my expenses. And he said, Skip, as a startup, that's next to impossible.
Yeah.
He said it takes a long time to get income up to expenses, but he said overnight you can drop your expenses to meet your income.
Mm.
And so out of those two ways of making your company balance financially, I was able within about 60 days when he told me that to really cut our expenses at HighPoint to meet our income. And within 90 days, then we were able to see black ink, Michael,
Wow.
just because of that one little factor.
Mm.
The other thing that Bill taught me that I'll never forget is we had three departments in the company. We have an IT portion, we have a medical billing and collections portion, and we have a consulting department. And they were all lumped into one on my financial statements.
Mm.
And Bill says, how do you know which one of those is successful or not? How do you know which one of those is making money or not? And my financials just said HighPoint Medical.
Mm.
And what Bill did is he said, Skip, break your financials out. He said, have your financials be actually have three separate financials. Put them in three columns. You have the consulting side, you have the IT side, and you have the medical billing and collection side. And then, Michael, for the first time, that was years ago now, I could see what department was needing help, what department was not doing so well, and which ones were pulling the weight. And it really helped. So I think in answer to your question, Bill telling me that leadership was clarity,
Mm.
if I wouldn't have had that mentorship or that coaching, how many years would I had to beat my head against the wall before I found out those kind of tools and how they might help me?
Right. Gosh, it's so good. And it seems like a lot of times it is those simple principles in principle, right? But you were able to take that immediate action. You were able to get black
Yeah,
really
yeah,
quickly
yeah.
and not overextend yourself, which unfortunately I think a lot of businesses do or feel like they need to, right? Right out of the
Mhm.
gate. And so it provided clarity, but also probably provided a lot of peace of mind too. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I think we're just bouncing around this issue. It's come up a couple times already in our conversation today, but I think mentorship is so important. Many times entrepreneurs, and I'm so guilty, we think we can do it on our own. We want to do it our own. We have something to prove. It's kind of like a man and a wife driving down the road, and the man never wants to ask for directions. And it's kind of an old joke. My husband will never stop for directions.
Mm.
And if we could just adopt the philosophy in our businesses, Michael, of man, it doesn't hurt to stop and ask questions. It doesn't hurt to stop and ask somebody who's been there
Mm.
and done that what they did to avoid costly crashes, what they did to influence their bottom line. And you'll always get incredible answers if you pick on the right mentors.
Mm, yeah. And you said something earlier too that I thought was so important is, a lot of times we can get to those answers or we can figure out the hard way, whatever it is, but it collapses time and it kind of collapses pain when we get to go through and have those mentors in our life that really can make a big difference, whether that's for
Huge.
business or leadership or any area, right? And
Yeah.
really help
Yeah.
us move forward a lot faster. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Huge.
awesome.
It's a
Um,
big part of success.
Oh yeah, definitely. Maybe for our listeners, give them kind of a gauge of where you guys are at currently, because obviously you started small and then have
Mhm.
expanded. You've got multiple locations in different cities. Maybe just kind of where you were and then where you're at today when it comes to that growth and size and what you guys get to do.
Oh, that's exciting. We started out. We literally had 8 clients. In fact, I'm blessed. I have an incredible leadership team. That's one thing I'd like to touch on a little bit later.
Mhm.
Is the importance of having a good leadership team in and amongst ourselves, Michael. There's no way that you and I can run a successful business, but the Lord is blessed because He's given me quality leadership in charge of each one of our departments. One of those departments is our accounting team, and that's headed by Lori. Lori is a licensed CPA. We're blessed to have her work for us full time since day one, almost 14 years ago now.
That's great.
And she has come in and she has helped put together our financials. She's helped put together our slush funds, our reserve accounts, all those different types of things. And I think what she has done in that department is allowed us to go out and build business. Like you said, multiple cities. We're now in 20 states. HighPoint IT has grown. We're helping. We've even branched overseas now into a couple different countries where we're helping keep computers alive and running and virus and malware free. Every time we get a new state, we add it to our website. It's exciting. The IT guys look at that and they see that growth. We've opened another branch office down in Boise. One of my all-time best friends, Tim Essink, manages the Treasure Valley for us down there, and that's been a blessing. We've networked to find the right people. We got the right players in place now, and we're just seeing the results of that expansion. It leads me to one of my favorite parts of business, which is networking.
Mhm.
In fact, just today we were on conference calls and we found out that some more people we know have friends over here that have clinics that need help. And so we're able to go in there and engage. And that whole networking portion of business is huge for us. In fact, they
Mhm.
say, there's the old saying, your network is your net worth.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
believe that with all my heart.
Yeah.
Or what's the other saying? Networking and not working are only one letter apart.
Yeah.
And that is so true. It's all in who you know. I find
Yeah.
that when we're going to go into a new market like the Boise Valley, instead of just going in there cold turkey, what I told Tim is I said, Tim, I'd rather be pulled into the market instead of pushed into the market.
Mm.
And at first, maybe we didn't all understand that, but what it meant to me was let's get a few clients down there. Let's get those clients so satisfied that they're willing to tell other clients. And through that network, now we're being pulled into that market. Now we have to hire more staff. Now we have
Mhm.
to have a bricks and mortar office to work out of. And that's kind of been, I guess, our path to success over the past several years is to network our way into communities. and do a good job. If you do a good job, people will talk about you.
Right, right. And I think that's so important because it ties back into the relationship piece you were talking about before. And I love that idea of kind of being pulled into a market or being pulled into business, or
Yep.
really, if I hear you right, folks being so satisfied that they can't not talk about you guys, right? They're
Right.
raving fans, and I know you guys have incredible service. So really, it's saying, gosh, how could you not work with HighPoint, right? How could you not work with these guys?
Yep.
And having people be attracted to you naturally instead of spending all the time trying to go into cold markets, maybe, or pushing real hard or spending lots of money on advertising, and maybe trying to acquire instead of really trying to retain and attract. Is that kind of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing?
It takes a lot more money to find a new client versus to retain a client and keep them happy.
Mm.
And we found in our business, we do very little marketing. We might put an ad in a magazine once in a while, but more and more we're being asked, our IT team is being asked to write articles in journals now.
Hmm.
Frankly, we've got some IT guys that are just solid in the in the area of cybersecurity. They're solid in the area of antivirus, anti-malware, how to make sure your emails are encrypted, all those different things that keep us safe in today's harmful environment of the internet. And once you get a reputation like that, now you've got journals calling you going, hey, can you write an article about cybersecurity? Can you write an article about being a managed service provider in the arena? Can you take over my billing and collections because I heard your team did a good job with that practice over there?
Mm.
And with that kind of a reputation, pretty soon you've got that becomes your billboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I love it. And obviously it's been the building blocks for success for you guys. So
Right,
that's
right.
fantastic. That's great.
Fun to talk. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to remember. Um, it wasn't always easy. We
Mm.
struggled like any other business does. I had a mentor one time. He said, "Skip, if you knew beyond question of a doubt that someday you were going to be successful, what would you do different than
Mm.
you're doing right now?" And I began to think about it, and I thought to myself, Michael, I would probably appreciate the rough times more.
Mm.
Because think about it. There's the old saying that the mountaintops produce a view, but it's the valleys that produce the fruit.
Mm.
And many times when we're in the valley, we're starting a business and it's a struggle. We're working hard to find staff. We're working hard to identify ourselves, who we are, what our value is, what we have to offer the community. And we're in this valley. But if you knew that someday your business was gonna be ravenously successful, wouldn't you enjoy those valleys a little bit
Mm.
more? Wouldn't you go, man, I'm eating ramen noodles for dinner right now, but someday I'll have steak.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself,
Mm.
that's a great point. I think I would enjoy the rough times more. I think I would enjoy the hardships because that's part of starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
If we as business entrepreneurs never have rough times, how would you ever appreciate the good times?
Right. Right.
I love that. I've grabbed a hold of that. That was probably 25 years ago that gentleman told me that. And I thought, I'm going to grab a hold of that and never forget that. And
Yeah.
today, yeah, we've got way more success than I ever dreamt possible. We've got, there's just quality people. I walk through our company on a daily basis and I'm able to engage and talk to staff members and team members. I don't like the word employee.
Mm-hmm.
So they're team members, they're staff members. I don't think anybody in our business has ever heard me call them an employee. I don't see them as that. We also use a lot of we, us, and our in our business. It's not my business or his business or their business. It's our business.
Mm.
And in a lot of times, we share a lot of bonuses at HighPoint. Our Christmas paychecks as a bonus are nice bonuses. Our profit sharing checks to our leadership are nice paychecks. It allows our staff to feel like they're a part of what's going on.
Mm.
They want to save money and make money because it means bigger bonuses for them at the end of the quarter.
Right.
Having ownership or buy-in of the company is huge to us.
Yeah. That's so important, and obviously you have this great team. And so I want to jump back to something that you had mentioned earlier, because it's been really fun to hear you speak about, how you talk about your team, how you talk about your leaders specifically. And, what do you think are some of the most common leadership challenges that you've seen, not only through your company, but obviously you get to be a little bit inside of businesses or get to see some of the inner workings. What are some of those common challenges that you see? And then, maybe one or two things that you feel like has really helped you guys move forward to overcome some of those challenges?
That's a great question. I think we touched on it just briefly, engaging our clients and those types of things. We have dealt with this. I think where Bill Jung brought up the little short, concise phrase, leadership is clarity. I think one of the biggest challenges, Michael, that business leaders have, it's one that I've had, that I deal with, I deal with it all the time. Leadership is clarity. Am I being clear with the goals that we're setting for the team?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being clear with what our culture represents within HighPoint on a daily basis? Am I abiding by that culture? If I want people to dress sharp in my office, am I dressed sharp?
Mm-hmm.
Do I lead by example? When I say, I send out an email, hey guys, heard a couple of words that weren't really in alignment with our culture. Let's be careful of our language. Am I following those same principles? And I think it's probably one of the biggest complications, biggest challenges we have as leaders is that we have to walk by example. We have to walk the talk. There's no time when you can't be on your A. There's no time when you can't be on your A game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've got to, no matter what's going on at home, when I walk in that front door to my office, it's game day.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be happy. I got to be upbeat. I got to have I might have the weight of the world. When we went through the pandemic, I know that we've had conversations, but going through this last 3 years has been a challenge for business. There's no question. We had to restructure. We had staff working in 5 or 6 states full time. We had staff working in their homes. We had staff coming in here. Everybody's behind a mask. We had to take our temperatures and everything when we came in the office. It was a madhouse for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that really brought up some challenges for us. And how do we deal with that? I've always liked my staff to be under the same roof because there's a lot of collaboration that happens when you got a question for IT, you can just run across the building and go talk to an IT guy. One of the builders' computers goes down. We just dial IT help and they're over there within 30 seconds. When you're working from home, man, all bets are off. It was a new ball game. And so some of those challenges that we encountered during that pandemic have really strengthened us. We learned how to work as a team together, even though we're not under the same roof, the same 4 walls. We learned how to think like each other. We learned how to maybe do without bothering each other and think on our own a little bit better in some capacities. And so I really think when you have those challenges, if you can learn from those, you will always, always, always come out stronger on the other side of a challenge.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good. And it's true. I mean, like you kind of mentioned before, the valleys can really help us when we have the right perspective grow so that we can get to that next summit. But it's interesting when you're talking about that too, of really walking the walk. It just reminded me of a quote that a mentor shared with me, which is kind of an equation where it's stated belief plus actual practice equals actual belief. Right. So it's like, gosh, I can say whatever I want to say or say I believe in whatever I believe, or here's our mission statement. Right. But what are the actions? What am I doing every day? What are we doing every day? And that really shows us what we believe. And so I love that you guys are really pressing into that. And if there's issues that come up, it sounds like too, hey, let's address it. Let's be timely with it. Right. Not letting things slide by. So that's great.
No, the valley, I love that. That picture just sits in my mind. The valley, even though the mountaintops produce the views, the valleys produce the fruit. And if you can take advantage of those valleys, anybody loves to be on a mountaintop. There's no question. The views from a mountaintop are spectacular. And when you think about it, nobody wants to be in the valley of their business. But literally, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where staff learn. That's where relationships are built, is in those valleys. And therefore, that's the most productive for a company, is learning from those challenges. So, I like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Switching gears a little bit, this all kind of ties in
Yeah.
together. But, for some of our listeners, they're maybe not just starting something new. They already have an established team. Maybe they're newer into that organization.
Mhm.
Maybe they're newer into a role. They're trying to really help move the culture forward. And,
Mhm.
from just being able to hear you and see the results and knowing, your focus on your team, what are some of the things that you would encourage our listeners to do to help build a really strong team culture? Maybe one or two things that have really stood out to you that you've said, gosh, this has really helped my leaders feel empowered, or
Mhm.
this has really helped our team have that strong sense of culture that keeps driving those great results.
That's another great question. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite questions. We get asked that often. In fact, what culture have we adopted here at High Point that supersedes anything else? And I think the culture that I would say, or the element that we are most proud of, is I think if you were to walk around this office today, and sometimes I get emotional because I love my staff so much,
Mm.
but if you were to walk around my office today and ask anybody in the building or wherever they're working from remotely today, there's no question in any of my staff's mind that I love them, that I care about them, and that I want for their best interest. And I think if you put that culture into what you're building and people don't feel like a number, Michael, we didn't lose people in the pandemic. A lot of my colleagues and I talk to, and I get on the phone and they go, "My gosh, I'm losing staff." And we gained staff during the
Mm.
pandemic. We didn't lose staff, and part of the reason was because when we'd have a little better month than an average, I'd run down to Fred Meyer and I'd get just a whole bunch of gift certificates, and I'd bring them back to my staff, and I'd pass those around the desk. Why Fred Meyer? I don't know, because Fred Meyer, you can get groceries, you can get clothes, you can get gas. And
Mhm.
I would want to do things for my staff that would show them that we were in it to win it. The staff that would show up here versus the staff that would stay home. I'd come out and pass bonus checks to the people that were showing up here at the office because I couldn't run the business without some of them making that level of commitment
Mm.
to being here, even though maybe they had a family that were sick with COVID back at home or whatnot, but they still made the decision to drive and be here. So I think as far as a culture, the other thing that High Point is very firm on is our families.
Mm.
I guess probably I bring that naturally because I love my family and would do anything for my family. But we're a big family business. It's not uncommon to have husbands, kids, spouses walk into High Point on a daily basis and walk through and say hi to the team. It's not uncommon to go in our break room at lunchtime and see various people that are family members of our staff coming in to have lunch with our employees. Sometimes I'll be sitting at my office and I'll have one of my young IT guys just happened here a couple weeks ago. I'm sitting there and I'm busy on my computer and I feel like somebody's looking at me. And I look up in my doorway and here's this beautiful family. And it's one of my IT guys. And he comes over and it was Felix. He goes, "Skip, I want you to meet my family." And
Hmm.
here was his mom and his sister. And they were anxious to come see where Felix was working. And
Mm.
I think that's the culture that we strive for. Our front desk, my mother, we're blessed. My mother is one of our receptionists at the front desk. My
Mm.
aunt is another one of our receptionists at the front desk, and they're quality ladies that the doctors that call in or the IT clients that call in, they often tell me, "Man, you've got the most receptive team in your lobby. It just makes me feel right at home when I call High Point." And that's what it's all about. It's
Mhm.
probably the thing that I love the most about our culture is that my staff know that I'm all about them. And number two, we're a family based business and we love families around here.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good. And like you said, it's palpable, right? You can feel it. And you brought up the emotion piece, right? Like for you personally, it kind of catches you up in emotion sometimes
I
because
bet.
there's this real family, and that's the piece that, with the work that I do, focusing on cultures, it really is tangible. I'm sure you've experienced this going into certain businesses, and there's kind of this, you walk in and you're like, gosh, everybody knows my name. This feels really good.
Yeah.
People seem to like each other.
Yep.
And so there's kind of just this atmosphere that happens, which you guys get to have benefit of, and then you can feel it
Yeah.
the other way too, right? If you step into a place and some of those elements aren't in place, or even just if
Yeah.
it's kind of okay, gosh,
Yeah.
there's just a whole different energy there. or lack
Yeah,
thereof that can really impact performance, right? Can really impact the bottom line
absolutely.
and really everything that people do or don't do.
You're right.
Yeah.
So true. It's like walking into your, how much do you love walking into your bank, and before you even engage, somebody from the behind the counter says, "Hey, Michael, come on up to my," it's like we love to hear our name. We love to be important. And I think that's an element that we here at the company, we love to invest in is our families. We like to have a good time. If I tell my staff often, if I'm not having a good time, we're done.
Mm.
We got to have a good time at what we're doing. In fact, just today, Linda is planning an all you can eat pizza and bowling contest. We're going to take the whole company will go down. And if you want to bring some of your family members with you, the more the merrier. We'll go down and we'll bowl for a couple of hours. And you'd be amazed. What I like about going out on a bowling night or any other event that we plan, we've had some fun events. What I love about the bowling night is even better than the event itself is the day after in the office, the energy and the it seems like the compassion and the camaraderie ship and the joking and the fun that happens the day after you do an event like that
Mm.
is huge, because your staff just feels that much closer to being each, friends with they're friends inside and outside of the office at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And it does. It just connects everybody in a whole different way. It's almost
It
kind of like
does.
instead of being one dimensional, you get to really see
Yep.
the best parts of each person, right? Or have more ways to connect. And I can't remember the name
Absolutely.
of the general, but I know one of the generals who was back in the Iraq war made a similar comment where he said, if I had to do it all over again, I would have gotten every important leader, before we launched and did all the important work that we needed to do and go on a whitewater rafting trip for a couple days together. Just
Wow.
just to really connect and be humans
Yeah.
together and build that trust, because even
Yeah.
as silly as it sounds, your pizza and bowling, which sounds so fun, we get to sort of see a different side to people and get to really develop those relationships first so that we can
Mm.
keep building that trust. So I love that you're doing that. Obviously it's helping drive a lot of that success for you too.
But that he is so accurate. Your general story makes so much sense to me. That hits me as being a core value. I think of like Destry heads our IT department, and Destry and I have been down to our cattle ranch and built fence together.
Hmm.
Outside, extracurricular, outside. I mean, sweating and working hard from morning till night, building fence over our butte down at the cattle ranch. Hal, who also manages our IT department, him and I have logged together. I've
Hmm.
watched that boy in a skidder picking up logs and throwing logs one way or the other. He's seen me on the other side of a chainsaw, to where he realizes that there's more to, we all find out there's more to each other than just
Hmm.
sitting behind a computer at the office. I
Yeah.
love that part of business.
Yeah, that's so good. And now you and
Yeah.
one of your managers too, I believe maybe the Boise office I saw built a sign together too, right? You guys did that
Yeah, yeah.
for
And that's
your Boise
Tim. In fact,
location.
Tim and I go way back. We graduated, went to the same high school together, and it came time to make a sign. And I think they wanted $7,000 or $8,000 for the sign that we wanted. And Tim goes, "Skip, you're a welder." And I says, "Tim, you're a craftsman." He goes, "I'll do the wood part. You do the metal part." My wife Beth is a home designer. She incredible
Mhm.
talent with design and everything. She designed where the lights would come out and how it would shine around HighPoint IT, and it's a beautiful sign. And
Yeah,
I think we did it for, I don't know, $1,500 or something like that. But it
that's
was the
awesome.
teamwork. We
Mhm.
got Tim and Jerry, Beth and I, all four of us together, brought our talents together, and we got videos of each one of the four of us doing different parts of it, parts that we were all had comfort levels. I'm not the craftsman Tim is, and he wasn't the welder that I was, and so we just
Mhm.
threw our talents at it, and we came up with this beautiful sign, and now we get compliments on it all the time. And I think
Mhm.
you bringing that sign experience up, Michael, is exactly what we're talking about in building a business.
Mhm.
If you can have different leaders in different departments bringing their talents in the pool, then for crying out loud, get out of their way. You, as the business owner, maybe bring that talent together and then get out of their way and let them build business.
Mhm.
Tim is ripping it down in Boise right now.
Awesome.
He is a networking phenomenon
Mhm.
from my perspective. I love the guy. But you can't spend a half an hour with Tim and not think he's your best friend.
Mhm.
And so now my thing is to empower him and then get out of the road and let him do his work. Is he
Mhm.
going to fail once in a while? Could be. I don't know. Who cares? All I know is at the end of the day, he's going to have more success than failures because of
Mhm.
who he is as a person.
Wow. That's so good. I mean, there's multiple levels here, Skip, and I feel like I could go into lots of different things that you just said. But I think two things that I pulled out just immediately with Tim as the example is that number one, you trust him, right?
Mm. Yeah,
You want to
absolutely.
empower him, and that you're
Mm.
okay with him making a mistake. And I think sometimes as leaders we can fall into that trap, right, where
Mm.
we want whatever the thing is, the project, the company, the team, whatever that result may be, to be perfect, or
Mm.
we feel like, gosh, if there's any sort of error, it's going to fall back on me. But in hearing you, it's creating this atmosphere, this ability to fail forward. If something bad happens, hey, we'll figure it out, right? But
Yeah.
I just love how you said you're going to have more
Mm.
successes than failures.
Mhm.
And I think that empowers our teams as well, for number one, to have permission for us to kind of get out of the way, but
Yeah.
they can go through a process instead of
Mm.
us feeling like, oh well, we have to maybe own everything, and they're trying to kind of pry away some ownership, or they're trying to pry away some tasks. That's a lot of the
Yeah.
work that I see is leaders wanting to maybe spend that time to develop them. And so maybe you could just touch on that piece of, you have that trust element, you obviously have that
Mm.
love and care, you see the talent. What are some of the ways that you really feel like you continue to empower your teams
Mm.
that really helps them continue to grow as well?
My, Michael, you're asking questions that could take this conversation for the next 3 or 4 hours now. It's crazy. Now you're hitting some nerves with me, because that's probably, I love that more than anything in the world. When we tend to, as business owners, we start a business, and at the beginning we tend to think that we're better at all parts of the business than anybody else we could bring to the table,
Mhm.
which might be true. But by and by, you'll find that if you can let go of some of that and you can let somebody else come in, even though they might not be as good as you, let them come in, let them stumble a little bit. It's almost like raising kids.
Mhm.
Who's going to be able to throw the ball farther, you or your son, when you're playing catch? Well, you. But if you don't give your son that opportunity to catch that ball and to be inspired because he caught the ball and he goes, "Look, Dad, I caught the ball.
Mhm.
Look, Dad, I threw the ball." If we can't inspire our leadership around us, then guess what? You just got yourself into a high paid job, and you're going to be important and necessary to that business every single minute of every single day.
Mhm.
When we launched HighPoint, I told the leadership, my goal is that you guys get so good at this that when I sneak out the back door, you don't even realize that Skip's gone.
Mhm.
Do you know, Michael, I'm proud to say that I can my wife and I are putting together a beautiful piece of property, building a home on Hayden Lake, and
Mhm.
I love to go out to the property. And what a blessing to be able to just put on my calendar a big X and say Skip won't be in on Friday, and go out and spend time with my bride on that beautiful piece of property, logging, cleaning up, whatever, moving dirt, whatever the day's goal is. But to know that in my absence, the company will probably run better than if I was present,
Mhm.
because all those people that you've empowered, are key leaders, carry credit cards. Why? Because I trust them financially. I trust them to make the right choices financially with company money. They'll go out and buy this or buy that. Just this last quarter, we bought several $100,000 in software.
Mhm.
And some of my IT guys were sending those quotes back to me going, "What do you think of this?" And I didn't even read the quotes. I got to be honest. Please don't tell them that. But I would fire those
Yeah.
quotes back and they go, "You tell me, is that the best you think we can do?"
Mhm.
And sometimes they take those quotes and go, "No, I think we can do better. Let me negotiate a better price point. Let me see what I can do."
Mhm.
And they'd come to me and I go, "Is that the best we can do?" And they go, "Yep, that's the best we can do." And I'd go, "Then pull the trigger because I trust you."
Mhm.
And when you can empower people like that and you can give up choices and decisions and let those people run with it, man, it frees up your workload. It's one of the things I wanted to get on my rock and preach about today, if I could, with you, is
Yeah.
that don't try to be the deal. Get out of the road. Let your people come in. Let them do what they do well. Yes, they're going to fail. I fail miserably on a daily basis. It's okay. If your people fail, they learn from that failure and then they get back on the horse and they don't make that same mistake again.
Mhm.
And pretty soon it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, to where your team begin to grow, to where pretty soon I've got people on the staff right now Destry makes far better decisions in the IT world than I ever could.
Hmm.
Those guys have a knack for buying server. We just put in a new 6-figure cloud server.
Wow.
I am clueless as how that cloud server operates. All I know is I trust Shane, Kyle, Hal, and Destry to have made the right decision to make sure that server operates in the fashion that it should.
Hmm.
That's the beauty of empowering your people and getting out of the road.
Gosh, yeah.
I don't want to be. I don't
So
want.
good.
I'd like to be the. I'd like to be the guy that nobody knows who he is.
What does this guy do again, right? Or who
Yeah,
is that, right? You'll be like company picnic, right?
exactly.
Oh.
I had somebody call me up. In fact, the other day here, one of the jokes here in the office is every week we do courier runs for all of our medical practices,
Hmm.
and what that means is we go out and we pick up all the cash and we pick up any paperwork at our maybe 20 local medical practices here in town. And one day, my daughter, who happens to do those courier runs, Lindsay, was away on vacation. She goes, "Dad, can you do the courier run for me?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to go out and do the courier run. I just like to go out and see all the doctors and see all of our customers as often as I can." And I went out and did the run, and I came back. And when I got back to the office, one of my staff said, "You're never going to believe the call I got from one of the practices." And I said, "What was that?" And she said, "Well, when you stopped at such and such a practice, they didn't have their whole courier bag ready. And the office manager called HighPoint and said, 'Could the courier boy come back? We didn't get him all of his stuff.'" And that tickled me. That was the
Wow,
coolest thing I've ever
that's
heard.
awesome.
So now I have the title here. I come in the office a lot, and I'm called the courier boy.
I love it.
You couldn't make me happier, Michael, than to call me
Mm.
the courier boy, because
Mm.
I'll play whatever role I need to play to make sure the team makes it as a whole.
Gosh. Yeah. That's so good, Skip. And again, on so many different levels, but just having that humility and having your team really have that focus for service too, right? Whether it's you
Yeah,
running and doing, being the courier boy or whatever that can look like.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
love hearing that piece. And I think the big piece for me too, and I know we could probably spend some time on this, but you have people that you've known in your life for a long time. I mean, you have family, you have, people from high school, you have all these people, and some people would say, don't hire family, or oh, hey, don't hire somebody you know real well, and
yeah,
but what I've heard is that because you're putting relationship first and you're putting in trust in place and you have a really solid process of empowering them and helping them grow, that there's not the normal friction that may occur, right?
right.
With somebody who you've known for a long time or maybe has a
Sure.
family connection. Is that kind of been part of your guys' story as well?
Absolutely. And I think that there's staff that have made the choice to not make High Point a long-term part of their life, and they've left for one reason or the other. We have that, like any company. But I think the people that we have, I mean, we got people that have been with us since day one, 14 years. There's
That's great.
more than a handful of people. All of our leadership have been here since day one. And the leadership core, I call them my foundation of the company, have been here since day one. So we got a lot of good stories, a lot of good memories together. But I think that you can keep anybody you want to keep in your company.
Mhm.
And I think the good Lord gave us 2 ears and one mouth, and we should use them in that ratio. We should
Mhm.
listen more than we talk. A lot
Mhm.
of times, High Point's not perfect. I've got staff that might get hurt feelings. I got staff that tell me, "Well, I think it's time for me to move on." And if there's staff, Michael, that I want to keep, I go after them with a death grip. I'll go out on
Mhm.
a walk. I'll go to dinner with them, and I'll maybe arrange a nice dinner in the evening, or if they just have time to sit in the conference room, and I'll go, "What is it that's wanting to take you away from the team?"
Mhm.
And usually, Michael, it's some silly little thing where they got their feelings hurt, or maybe pay raises came out and they got 50 cents an hour less than what they were hoping for. Or
Mhm.
it's usually something pretty small that if you can listen to their need, and you put their shoes on and you wear and you look at it from their perspective, I would say an overwhelming majority of the time it's more of a simple thing to go, "Okay, if we could fix this, this, and this, would it change your mind about leaving?"
Mhm.
And that goes for family, that goes for close staff, whoever it might be. I think just showing that sympathetic, compassionate side, that you're in it with them,
Mhm.
um, really means a difference. Really makes a big impact on team and keeping team. Right now, keeping team is so important to us because it's,
Mhm.
you like it or not, it's an employee market. I
Right.
mean, you can go down and make, it's pretty easy to see 18 to 20 bucks an hour signs. You drive down Highway 95 and you see,
Mhm.
starting pay, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So you've got to do something beneficial to your team that makes them want to stay in that culture. Because
Mhm.
finding and training new staff that's no fun.
Yeah. And it's such a big challenge. I mean, honestly, with a lot of the clients that I work with, again, culture is the big hot button, but also retaining great people. And,
Yes.
I've helped with exit interviews, and I've helped with, hearing why people leave. And I've never ever heard, I'm sure you never have heard either, well, I was valued too much. I
Yeah.
got celebrated too much here. That's why I left, or left the last place. It's always kind of comes down to maybe a misunderstanding to work through, like you're doing,
You're
which
right.
is
You're
amazing,
right.
right? Not just taking the first answer if it's somebody you're really wanting to hold on to.
Hmm.
But being really creative, as I've heard throughout this time that you've been able to share too, of how do we
Mm.
really help people feel valued in the work that they
Yeah.
do? How do they feel empowered? How do they feel trusted? How do they feel like you care about the whole spectrum of who they are? And I think you hitting on all these pieces, Skip, for me has just been really encouraging too, because I know that you guys are doing such great work, and
Mm.
and your leadership team is as well. So it's just going to be amazing to see what you guys continue to do together as
Mm.
well. So,
Michael, one of the things too, as you're talking, you trigger so many thoughts. One of the things that I think is important, if I had to tell other business owners that are watching this podcast, I would say maintain a healthy balance.
hmm,
Balance is so important in business. I've seen men and women get burnt out in their businesses because they don't have a bit of a balance. And I think I'm very blessed. I have a precious bride that balances me and um, keeps me grounded. Beth is an amazing woman. She's a strong Christian woman. She is an amazing cook, an amazing housekeeper, but just an amazing partner.
hmm,
And I sometimes I'm not going to lie to you. There's tough days, and I'll go home and she'll just listen, and she lets me pour my heart out, and she goes, "You feel better?
hmm,
Let's go out to dinner."
hmm,
Or something like that, and she helps ground me. Another balance that I have is spending time with family.
hmm,
um, I have got my parents that live here in town. My daughter lives here in town. I've got my in-laws live just 30 miles away. I've got some close family here that we spend a lot of time with. The other thing I spend a lot of time with is church. I've got a
hmm,
lot of buddies at church, both men and women, that we do extracurricular stuff. We might go out to dinner. We might go shooting. We might go out for quad rides. We might go kayaking. Whatever. There's all kinds of different things. And then there's the hobbies that I have. So I would say maybe you're blessed to have a good spouse for balance. Maybe you're blessed to have good family members. If not, maybe you've got good church people that you can hang out with. But have some good hobbies. Get out in
hmm,
nature. Beth and I
hmm,
love to hike. We love to go on long walks together. We love to kayak. We're big on bike riding. Those types of things where you can just get out of business mode, shut the phone off. My gosh.
hmm,
As a rule, Beth and I never take our phones to dinner with us,
hmm.
because so many times you walk into a restaurant. I don't know. Have you seen this? You walk in and you've got a whole family sitting there and everybody's on their phones.
Mhm.
And it's like you've got an electronic device within arm's reach anywhere we're at in today's society. And I say, I'm a big advocate. Leave that stuff in the rig. And
Mhm.
when you walk into a restaurant, engage with each other, laugh, have a good time. But I
Mhm.
think to a lot of our entrepreneurs, our business types, balance is a huge thing that has to be focused on.
Mhm.
The gentleman I talked about early on, Bill Jung always pushed us to go out and spend an hour or two a week. He said, I don't care where you go, but go somewhere where you can be alone, an hour or two a week, and you focus. He says, take a notepad and a pen and you focus on your goals. You focus on what you want to build. You focus on where things are. What does your 5 years look like? What does your 2 years look like? What does your 2 months look like? And he says, that time that you invest in yourself will be invaluable to you long term.
Mhm.
And that has come so true. It's you've got to get out of business mode sometimes and create that balance in your life.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
important.
Scott. So good. And it's so true because all those different buckets, relationships and your health and going
Yeah.
through and doing some fun things together. And you
Yeah.
even mentioned, at the very beginning, you said, hey, sometimes it's hard for me to unplug. It's hard for me
Yeah.
to step away from work. And you have such a great team who is able to help you with all those different things. But I think that's so true. And for you to guys, for you to have such a strong trajectory of growth and to have such a great culture,
Mm.
just hearing you knowing, hey, that balance is going to be so key for you. And then that trickles down, right? Because now you're an example in a really positive way of, hey, this is
Mm.
okay to do. I see that sometimes too, where folks don't feel like they can maybe have that level of balance because they see their leader maybe overworking, right? Or not
Right.
setting that same
Right.
example. They'll say, hey, you guys take time off, but they won't, do those things. So I think I just love that you're highlighting that and, focusing on that. And the one piece
Mm.
that, I think has been probably really prominent for our listeners and something that's really important to me too, is I've heard throughout this whole conversation that we've had, which I've just loved,
Mm.
is your focus on faith, right? Like
Mm.
how faith has really helped you grow
Yeah.
as a leader and just your appreciation that way. So as we kind of end up our time together, I would just love to know, from your perspective, how has faith really helped you be not only a better leader, but how does it help you both in the workplace and in every realm that you're called to lead?
Yeah. Well, Michael, you got some good questions. I know you well enough to know that you and I are both men of faith. It's easy for me to talk about faith because I have a strong faith, and we have a saying in our company. I have a saying in my family, and my wife and I have a saying. We're all prayed up on this,
Hmm.
and I often put that in quotations if I'm sending out an email or whatnot, because I've got a lot of my clients are faith based.
Hmm.
Some of our doctors' clinics and whatnot have a great relationship with some of these doctors that have a strong faith, and they hear me say that a lot. I'm all prayed up on this,
Hmm.
and what it means to be all prayed up on something is no matter what happens. I'll give you an example. We're interviewing right now for a new IT staff down in our Boise location. We need a couple more technicians down there. And we've got a list of resumes we're going through. And as we go through those, we want to make sure and get the right person. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
very important because if you're going to put 4 to 6 months worth of training and education into somebody, you're looking to, if you can keep them for 10 years or more, that's a good investment. If you put that same education, that same training into somebody and they leave 3 months later, what have you gained?
Hmm.
And Tim and I were talking about this just the other day, and I said, "Well, Tim, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of this guy? What do you think of this guy?" And Tim came back at me and he goes, "Skip, you know what?" He says, "We're all prayed up on this." He says, "I say we interview these guys, and he says the good Lord, he'll bring gold to the surface."
Hmm.
And I think when you're all prayed up on something, this would be my statement of faith. When we're all prayed up on something, no matter what happens with your company, no matter what happens because of the decisions you make, if you're going into that with God being your partner, Michael, I don't know about you, but I would rather write checks on God's bank account all day long rather than
Hmm.
my own.
Yeah.
So if God is your partner moving into a lot of these decisions, man, it just takes so much load off your shoulders. We purposely at HighPoint, in fact, 14 years ago, I told Bill Jung this. He says, "Skip, your title is president." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Why not CEO?" And I said, "Well, I'm of the opinion that God's going to be our CEO, and that's the top spot in our company. I'm just going to be his president. So
Hmm.
if he leads us, I'm just going to go on his bidding."
Hmm.
And I think faith is a huge part of what we do because of that, because we rely on that, Michael. Yes, we have to make good decisions. Yes, you've got to get up in the morning, put your pants on like everybody else, and you've got to go out and do what you feel are the right things to do. But if you go into that with a mindset that you've got a partner, a heavenly partner, man, it just takes so much of the pressure off of your daily decisions. It's like,
Hmm.
wow, he will guide you.
Hmm.
He will. I mean, I'll tell you what. We have two voices. We get the voice on this shoulder and a voice on this shoulder, and the voice on this shoulder sometimes says, you don't have to go the extra mile. And
Hmm.
then this voice is like, yes, you should go the extra mile.
Hmm.
And when it comes down to it, most people know which voice they should listen to. So we're a big family of faith based people here. I think it's a big part of what we do at High Point.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. Thank you for spending time and just kind of highlighting that even more, because again, I know that it's been a big part of your journey, and also just for your company too. And even, saying, hey, we're
Mm-hmm.
praying over these decisions, and, everybody's at a different place with their faith, but, having
Yeah.
that driven from the top, or also just being kind of one of those main points for you guys, I just think is critical. And I personally believe that our faith, not only in God, but also in our businesses and where we're going to go in the weeks and months and years ahead, is going to be even more critically important. And I know sometimes there's sort of that unspoken rule of, well, you don't talk about certain things within
Yeah.
business, but
Yeah.
I'm almost, kind of like, gosh, how can you not, right? Because
Yeah.
when it's something that's really a big part of, for you personally, or, for people where they have that, gosh, it's almost like working with one hand behind, tied behind your back a
Yeah.
little bit. And so I just love you
I-
sharing the very practical pieces that you guys go through as well. So,
Yeah, I think you touched on something. I think we have to be very careful about, people don't want to hear about faith in God and those types of things. And everybody's entitled to their own beliefs. And I appreciate being entitled to my beliefs on that. But I think faith is not only maybe in maybe heavenly things, but that faith, even you could push that word faith. I think faith in your people is just as
mm,
important. I think there's people have faith in a lot of things. Maybe it's your faith in your work ethic, or faith in what you can accomplish. So faith is a big word. And I just appreciate not being criticized for my healthy faith in heavenly things. We're all entitled to believe the way we want to believe, but it's sure been a blessing and a benefit for us here at High Point over the past 14 years.
yeah, that's so good. Skip,
Yeah.
I feel like we could continue this conversation, like you said, probably for a couple hours, but I know for the sake of your schedule and your time, and just gracing us with your time,
Yeah.
because I know you're so busy,
Yeah.
it's just been honestly an absolute pleasure for me. I know it will
Mm.
be for our listeners as well. And so, as we kind of wrap up our time, is there any last thoughts or anything else that you want to make sure that you get to share? Might be an encouragement to a leader who maybe feels like they're struggling a little bit. Maybe they see the
Mm.
storm clouds a little bit more than what they see the sunshine right now when it comes to leading their team, or just anything that
Yeah.
you really feel like would make an impact as we close up our time together.
Michael, I think to summarize, I think I would just push. I'm happy you ended on the faith topic, because you have to have faith in something. Um, Faith is such an important factor in making good business happen. Another thing that I think is huge, and that is something we overlook. A lot of people, they don't really want to work at building the relationships. I've talked to guys that are like, no, I'll just put money into marketing and hopefully I'll get calls off of an ad in a magazine and whatnot, because I'm not big on relationships. And I
Hmm.
think you're missing the boat. If you're watching this podcast or listening today, and you're not big on relationships, I would say rethink that a little bit.
Hmm.
And if you're not, then bring somebody onto your team that is good at building relationships. I think of how you and I met. I went to grade school with a guy named Alvin Bartholomew.
Hmm.
Alvin's a good buddy of mine. He's an incredible businessman. Him and his wife Sue, they're just good people.
Hmm.
And through that relationship, Alvin, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something like that, Alvin says, "There's this
Hmm.
guy you got to meet. His name's Michael Wolsten." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And we went and sat down at a coffee shop together and just started a relationship, started a
Hmm.
friendship. And since then, we've not only become better friends, now we sit on chambers together here in town. Now we're doing a podcast together, and we've built this beautiful friendship out of networking.
Hmm.
And that networking, if I could say one thing about business that is crucial, it would be to push that network. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Hmm.
There's no better way to put that than to say any way you're going to build business is going to come from somebody who has a better way of doing business than you do. You, you'll find out real quick. I was at a chamber board meeting the other day, and the projector wasn't working. And somebody said, "Oh, Skip has an IT company. He'll know how to fix it." Michael, you and I both know my IT. You'll know how sharp I am IT wise. I had a hard time getting on this podcast today, for crying out loud. I had to grab one of my IT guys and say, "Okay, how do I get on this podcast?" And so it's not what I know,
Hmm.
it's who I know that's better than me that I can plug in. And together as a team, we can build something beautiful. I
Hmm.
would say that would be my last words.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Skip. So excited to spend time with you today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your background, and just a little bit of your heart too towards your
Yeah.
team. And I'm just excited to see what High Point gets to continue to do and continue to build. So thank you
You
so
bet.
much.
Thank you, Michael. God
Mhm.
bless. You have a good evening.
Yep, you too.